So it's regarding emptiness. It's like the fact that it inherently exists. The cup.
Well, yeah, confusion here is grasping onto the cup existing inherently. Yes.
It seems to me that it is somehow crucial to understand suffering, to understand pain, and to understand compassion in order to understand this, what it means to be dependent.
To understand compassion and to understand suffering. So, okay. So remember, also, we're talking about emotions here. In Buddhism, compassion is not an emotion. Again, it's an aspiration, it's a wish. In Buddhism, it's the aspirational wish for ourselves and others to be free of suffering and its causes. But if we don't know what suffering is, and we don't know what the causes of suffering are, how are we going to have compassion? It's just words. So therefore, we need to know, like you said, what is suffering? And suffering just doesn't mean pleasant, unpleasant, painful, physical. Here, the broadest understanding of suffering is at the deepest level, the human condition is such that there's always a potential for suffering to arise in our life. It's always there. Why? Because our mind is contaminated. So if we understand that, and we understand that we can eliminate that contamination that through the emptiness practice, then we can have compassion. So actually they're sort of all intertwined. Now, as a beginner, we often talk about practicing the two wings of wisdom and compassion. You know, emptiness and compassion. Practice them separate. They're not separate. But as a beginner, they appear to be separate. And that's why we need to work on them separately, because we're grasping. So we need to work on them separately. But actually what you'll find is if you really get into the emptiness practice and you really start to release the grasping, then actually the natural expression of emptiness is compassion. I mean, there cannot be any other expression than compassion, because you realise no boundary anywhere. But until we get there, we need to work on them individually. And yes, we need to have an understanding of each element to support each other. So what you find is that with all of these things, including shamatha and other practices, we need an integrated approach to practice. If we leave any one of these elements out, we're cutting ourselves short. We're going to be struggling. Whereas if we engage in each of these elements, as you said, the understanding of one will deepen the understanding of another. They'll help each other, and we'll be able to go much deeper. Okay. Let's just go a little bit further in the text, and then it's nearly time for an afternoon tea break. So it says the final root of all faults is innate self-grasping. So this is this grasping onto me. That's step one, ignorance. Page 9. 9 near the top. With respect to an awareness apprehending I in general, there are three ways of apprehending I. So when we have this sense of me, that can arise in three ways. It says the first is an I qualified by being truly existent, an I qualified by lacking true existence or by being mere name, merely imputed by thought, and three, an I that is not qualified by either of those two. And the commentary on that says the third one is a conventional valid cognition positing the mere I. The second one only occurs in the continuum of those who have gained certainty with respect to Madhyamika view. It does not occur in others. The first one is grasping to self of person. So what that means is when we have a sense me, that can arise in one of three ways. Simply having the sense me is the third one. That's a what's called a conventional valid cognition. It means it's a valid mind correctly knowing there's me here. Nothing wrong with that. But usually what happens is as soon as we have a sense of me, then comes grasping. Not only is there me, but there's an independent me here. So that's the first one, is that as soon as we have correct apprehension, me, then grasping comes and we have independent me, or here they use the word truly existent me. It means the same thing. And the other one comes when we realise or understand emptiness. We realise there's no independent me here. We realise the me that's here is a dependent me. So if we've had some understanding and experience of emptiness, then when we have the correct mind me, in addition to that, we'll understand the me is the dependent me. And that is the second one. So there are three ways of seeing me. Just as me, and then grasping falsely, independent, and then or correct understanding of dependent me. So they're the three ways that are being talked about here. Clear or not?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't get the third one.
The third one is...
Not one and two, what is it?
Yeah, so the first one is grasping onto independent me. The second one, again, it says, only happens with someone who's gained a correct understanding of emptiness. And that is that to see that there is a dependent me here. So the first one is grasping to independent me. The second one is understanding dependent me. The third one is just simply me, without any understanding, right or wrong. That has to come first, because you have to have an apprehension of me to be able to either grasp or see that it's correct. Like cup. First, the valid mind would be simply cup. That's valid. But then immediately when we have that apprehension cup, we grasp independent cup. That's the false one. Or if we've had an understanding of emptiness, when we go cup, immediately following that we'll go, yes, that is a dependent cup. It depends on many factors. So the third one always is the first that comes in any apprehension of anything, and then from there we either go wrong or right. We either grasp or we know emptiness. But that third one is the valid mind, just acknowledging there's me, there's a cup, these things exist. That's all.
I thought that I started by believing in true existence. I was saying that before that I just didn't think philosophy and then
No, it's not philosophy, but what I'm saying is that you need to have something to grasp to. No? So what is that you grasp to is you apprehend cup. And in the instant you go cup, grasping grabs, because it's instinctive, it's not intellectual. So as soon as you go, you think me, immediately grasping comes, independent me. So they're two different minds. There's first the valid mind that just knows me.
So the third one is like neutral?
Well, it's not neutral. The third one is not having any understanding of how things exist. It's just positing their existence. The first one is a wrong understanding of how things exist. The second one is a correct understanding of how things exist. The third one is just things exist. That's it. Simple. Yeah.
Going out on a limb because I'm trying to get my mind around this. You keep going to a cup, but we're talking about me. So I wake up in the morning, I look in the mirror, and I just am. That's 3. I don't like what I see.
Well, hang on.
That's
hang on.
1. And 2 is I didn't sleep well.
No.
I'm in a bad mood.
No. So when you look in the mirror and you see, you instantly have a sense of me, then almost instantaneously, it's not like some seconds or minutes later, instantaneously, then independent me. Like almost instantaneous. And it's not intellectual. This is all instinctive. You just instinctively see me, and then immediately independent me. But it's not intellectual. There's a me here, existing from its own
But
side.
as soon as I like or don't like what I see,
Well, no, but
attaching or averting.
that comes because of that. Already when you see me existing here from its own side, already you're set up to have attachment aversion. It will happen, guaranteed. The second one won't happen until you have a correct understanding of emptiness.
And then what?
Then when you look in the mirror, you'll, depending on how well that understanding is, you'll look and you'll see, yes, me, but this me is simply, as what it says here, me is simply a label I'm applying to that basis of the body and the mind. That's all. Not so easy.
It's not that I have reasons why I look good or don't look
No, this is all intellectual.
It's dependent on these factors, those factors.
Yeah, you'll appreciate. Yeah, I mean, more will come because we haven't got to the dependent part yet. That's the next part of the text in the next session. We're going to unpack what does it mean to be dependent. Then we'll have a better appreciation of what that means. But last point, and then we'll take a tea break.
Sorry?
Yeah.
The third one is that if we didn't have the stains in our mind, the third one when we see,
The third one is.
just if we didn't have those stains,
No, the third one is simply the initial acknowledgement, cup, me. That's all. Very simple. It's just looking and going, cup, me. That's all. And then almost instantaneously following that, then we go, it's independent. I'm independent. That's the grasping. So there's like a two-step process there. So last point, then we'll take a tea break. So it says here, since self-grasping is the root of samsara, without refuting a conceived object of that, you will not be able to abandon self-grasping. And it's quoting Dharmakirti, without refuting its object, you will not be able to abandon self-grasping. Which means that if you don't understand that this conceived object, this independent me, you won't be able to refute it. And so it says, since the conceived object of grasping to be the being, the I, the person as truly existent, is a truly existent being, a truly existent I, truly existent person, it is necessary to refute that. Refuting that is to view the person as lacking true existence, because by ascertaining that the person lacks true existence and then familiarising oneself with that, grasping to the person as truly existent will be reversed. So again, is to correctly identify this, it's the independent me that we're trying to eliminate, and then through this emptiness practice, coming to see there is no independent me here and continually familiarising ourselves with that in meditation, and then we'll slowly be able to release that grasping and eventually achieve liberation, of course. So let's stop there for our afternoon tea break. Half an hour, so we've come back at 3:45, and then we'll launch straight into a meditation looking for this me. See if we can find it after a tea break.